Okay, so Lindsay, were you creative as a kid?
Yeah. My mother knitted and sewed and did all sorts of crafts, and so I was brought up in that sort of environment. And my dad was a house builder, so there were always lots of wood scraps and stuff around to hammer together. And I was always making something. Lived out in the country, so there's no cable television, or there weren't that many close by neighbors, so it was pretty much me left to my own devices a lot of the time. So I would paint and hammer things together and create Barbie furniture and that sort of thing. So yeah.
So do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a sister who's 6 years younger than me.
Okay. So was she also creative too in the family? Yeah. Fun.
Yeah, she's pretty creative. She paints. She mostly paints, mostly oil paints.
Oh, that's cool. Great. Well, so how did you get interested in art? Like, do you have a formal education, formal background, or are you self-taught, or tell us about that.
Well, I actually have always been working on stuff, drawing things, building things. And one of the few neighbors that we did have was a watercolor artist, and she gave lessons. And so from when I was 5 until when I was 13, I took drawing and watercolor lessons from her. So that's kind of what gave me the foundation.
That's cool. So how old were you when you started doing that?
5.
5.
Yeah,
wow.
And so I started watercolor at 7.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's great. So, so what's your favorite medium to work in?
Watercolor.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. But you work in lots of different things too. I know I've seen you do. Well, I don't know that there's anything I've not seen you do or try.
Yeah, I like everything. I think I like watercolor the best, especially after having children, because you have to learn to work with little snippets of time. So with watercolors, I just take the lid off my palette and I got my paper and I go, until, I might only get 5 or 10 minutes, but I don't have to waste time setting things up. I can just kind of jump in and go for it. Whereas if you have to get out oil paints, you've got to deal with solvents and you've got to squirt out your paints, and then you got to take care of it when you're done. I mean, with watercolor, you can just put a lid on the messy palette and deal with it later.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen to it.
When my son was an infant, I was trying to do something, to stay sane, even though, I love being a mom to a little one, but you know how it is. When they're little, you got to find that thing that you can do to keep yourself from going totally crazy. And so I started doing decorative painting. Of course, at that time, it was only with oil. And I remember the day that I brought home, it was the days of doing a canvas. We'd go spend several hours doing a canvas as well as, wooden type, plaques and things. But I remember coming home after having done a palette knife canvas with oil. So it had lots of oil on it. Brought it home, set it on the freezer, thinking that was a safe place to put it. And my husband's new work jacket was beside it on the freezer, not realizing that the cat, because it was new, and cats will do this thing where they have to investigate what's new. So she went in, jumped on the freezer, walked through the freshly done oil canvas, because of course it takes days to dry, and then walked across his jacket. And I'm like, I am so dead. I am so dead. So oil or watercolor is definitely a better choice when you have little kids. I agree. So you're going to show us some stuff? You want to flip the camera around?
Sure,
and I'm
sure.
going to keep, I'm going
This
to
is
keep
going to be just a little awkward for a second,
That's all
but
right.
that wasn't too bad.
I'm going to keep asking you questions while you play.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to let you get started.
Okay.
And then I'll just throw in another question every so often.
Okay, sure, go for it. Whatever.
Okay, so what are you using?
I'm using distress crayons because I just got them at the stamp show, and I'm curious just to play with them a little bit.
So this is your maiden voyage with the distress crayons?
I did actually record a comparison, which is going to post to my channel tomorrow, comparing them to gelatos and the Target crayons and some of the other things that are out there available. So I have played with them a little bit, but not too much. So I'm just going to kind of mess with them today and try to get a little bit more familiar with them.
So what was your first impression of the distress crayons?
They're very greasy. They're very slick feeling. They're not very water soluble. So if you're getting them thinking you're going to they're going to be watercolor crayons, I think you'll be disappointed because they're not very water soluble.
Okay. Yeah, I just bought I bought a set of them a couple days ago, and I bought the bright set, and I've been playing around with them just a little bit. They're just so wonderfully smudgeable, you know.
They are very smudgeable, yeah.
Yeah. What a cool face. Can you guys believe she just whipped that face right out there? Just wham, wham, wham. That's cool. So Petka in the chat says she had little mouse traps on her watercolor painting. That's funny. Somebody else wanted to know if you're going to do any more pen and ink drawings and things, I guess. Do you have any plans for doing that?
I don't have any plans for it, but I mean, I have a request list on my website that anyone can put a request down, and then I refer to that when I am kind of a loss for ideas.
Okay. And speaking of her website, if you'll check inside the description box below the video window, you'll see a list of all the ways you can get a hold of Lindsay, and she has I put in her blog and all of her social media links. And down at the bottom of that list, there is one for her Craftsy class that she recorded for Craftsy.com. And so you want to tell us a little bit about that class? Like, what is it about, and what was it like, recording the class, and just tell us about it.
Sure. So with Craftsy, you fly out to Denver and you record in their studios. So there's a lot of pre-production. Do you want to just know what the class is about, or about the experience of recording?
Oh, you can just tell us anything you want to tell us.
Oh, okay. And so that was definitely the most work I've ever put into anything, because it was about 4 months of pre-production planning, and then we actually go out there and film. But it's mixed media, and it's you do 3 paintings, and you get patterns if you want to, or you can just freehand along, or use what you learn on your own paintings. But it's mixed media, water media. So it's watercolors, watercolor crayons, mica powders, very water soluble stuff.
That sounds cool. Is there so it's all mediums, as opposed to, you're not getting into collage and that kind of stuff with it?
Oh, there is some collage in there, actually.
There is? Oh, cool.
Yep, yeah. There is. We do some collage. We collage some mulberry paper and some dried flowers and some skeleton leaves and some book pages. And so, yeah, but I wanted to kind of simplify it a little bit so people didn't feel like they had to go and get a bazillion things. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Please don't go online, okay? The kids are in the background, and I was afraid they were going to.
That's all right.
And it would boot me off. Yeah. There's but it's definitely limited. The supplies are limited so that you don't have to go crazy if you've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a lot of versatility out of just a few products.
So
and
how many sessions are involved with your online class?
It is 6 lessons, but it's self-paced, so you can kind of go at your own pace with it. And the actual video time is about 2 hours. So the watch time is about 2 hours, and then you take as long or as short as you want to complete it, and share your work in the classroom, and you have access to me to ask me questions, and usually get back within a day.
And it, if I understood you right, it goes on. It's sign up anytime they want to. If somebody decides they want to take it this morning, and somebody wants to decide they want to sign up for it tomorrow, that's fine, right? They don't have to sign up for a specific period of time or anything, so they can just go for it.
Absolutely. And you have lifetime access, so if you sign up today but you can't do it till next week or next year, you're fine.
That's great. That's cool. Okay, I got a couple questions here in the chat I'll ask you.
Sure.
Somebody wanted to know if the distress crayons could be used as white resist for the watercolors. If the white one could be used as a resist, I guess.
Yes, you can definitely, because it doesn't blend out with water. Let me just grab a brush here and show you. It doesn't really smear that much with water, so if I just, a little bit, but not a ton. So I think that, especially if you're really gentle with the watercolor on top, you'll be fine.
And what kind of paper are you working on there in your journal?
It's just a Canson mixed media journal.
Okay. Okay. And let's see, somebody wants to know what the difference is between matte medium and regular matte medium. Maybe matte medium and maybe a gel medium. That would be my guess that's what that question is.
Matte mediums and gloss mediums are both gel mediums.
Uh-huh.
So, it's kind of like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares type thing. You just would need to, some matte medium is going to be, some gel medium is going to be exactly like matte medium if it's like a matte finish. Most of them are, I believe.
And then there's different consistencies, some of them. Like the matte medium is thin, I think, isn't it? And the gel mediums are maybe a thicker consistency, and they come, I don't know.
Yeah, you can get a heavy gel or light gel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it probably would be a little bit heavier generally.
Yeah. So here's my thought. I think you need to get it all and try it. If you want to know what it is, if you want to know how it works, ask questions and then just go buy a bottle of it or a jar of it and then just see what it does. I think that's always kind of a fun thing to do too. Just experiment with it, see how many ways you can use it. Let's see, was there anybody else? Somebody else wanted to know if you do, let me see, if you do expos outside your home state. I'm not sure what an expo is. Is that a
you probably need like a scrapbook expo. The only stamp show I go to is the Heirloom Productions in West Springfield, Massachusetts.
And is that the one you went to recently?
Yes.
So what was that like?
That was great. I started going a few years ago, about 5 years ago, because I had friends that always went, and they invited me along. And because I was like, oh, what do I need to go to a stamp show for? I can find everything online. It's kind of silly to go and spend a couple nights in a hotel and pay for that just so I can go and shop. But I found it to be very valuable because you get to see demos and you get to meet the actual owners of these little smaller companies, and they're companies that you don't find at like your big box stores, or you wouldn't even know how to find them online because they just don't get the representation in magazines. I mean, and there aren't even nowadays, you can't even find a magazine hardly. So yeah, I started going to that one, and then last year I started teaching at that one, and I really liked that. And also it was a way to not that I felt guilty about going, but going for work, you feel a little bit more justified.
Yeah.
Just like when you're coming out ahead of the game when you come back home.
Yeah, yeah. So did you find any products that you just, that somehow just jumped into your basket or your tote bag or something that you just had to take home with you?
Oh yeah, the distress crayons. I hadn't seen them anywhere here locally where I live, so I grabbed those, and I got the new liquid metals, which I'm actually going to play with on this piece, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and of course stamps. I go for the stamps mostly because I think they're so versatile. I don't have any stamps to use up here today just because I didn't want to have to bother with inks or anything. I'm in my office, so I have a smaller area to work with, so I didn't want to clutter up the table any more than it already is.
So if you had to guess at how many stamps you own.
Oh my gosh.
That wasn't a fair question. You don't even have to answer.
I don't think I could answer, honestly. I don't have a clue. It's because, and especially with stamp sets, you could have like 20 stamps in a stamp set. I would say, I don't even know. I would think in the upper tens of thousands, probably.
Oh boy.
I don't know. Quite a bit.
You have a lot more than I have. And that is a fact. That is a fact.
I also do it for a living. I have clients that are rubber stamp companies, so I have that excuse.
That's right. Absolutely. And you know what? Whatever it takes. That's what we have. That's what we need to do. Okay, somebody wanted to know if I was drinking coffee. I'm not. I'm drinking tea, and I'm sorry if I'm making you thirsty. Yeah, and it's set way far away from the computer equipment. It's way far away. I find that when I'm talking a lot, I have to have something close by. Otherwise, my throat gets a little wonky. Oh, somebody else says to me, Barb, it is against the rules to count stamps, so I apologize for violation of the rules. So what was your favorite thing that you saw or experienced at the stamp show?
Honestly, my favorite thing is seeing what my students made in class, because we all started off with the same supplies and everyone left with a completely unique piece of artwork. So that's my absolute favorite thing. I love meeting people. And I mean, honestly, we enter strangers and leave as friends, because we end up like going out to dinner together and just, hanging out and meeting back in the breakfast nook in the hotel room, and crafting together. So it's such a wonderful community experience. I think that's the best part about it. And I love to see the demos. I love to see what people are doing, what's exciting, because these vendors have to come up with new things every year to, get people excited and continue to purchase their products. And they come up with some really innovative ideas. And I also love seeing what other people choose, because it's usually stuff I never would have picked, but then I see it through somebody else's eyes, and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I think I need that too, because or I see a different way to use something I already have.
Now, you've been doing YouTube for quite a while, right?
Yeah, since 2010.
2010. So I'm going to assume that because you have a sizable subscriber base on YouTube, that when you go to something like that stamp show, that there are people that walk up to you and go, oh my gosh, Lindsay Weirich, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like the first time that happened to you?
That was a little weird. It was very nice, but it was a little strange, because you don't really, like, oh my gosh, somebody knows who I am, what I mean?
Was it a little...
Not being frugal this weekend, girl. Sorry.
So it was a little strange, huh? That's funny. So any of you coming in that are just coming into the room, Lindsay Weirich is my guest for this creative chat, and she is doing a really cool portrait with distress crayons at the moment. So that's what she's doing, and I'm asking her questions. And anybody that has questions for her, put them in the chat in all caps, and we'll see if we can get to the questions. So going back to the thing about YouTube, what possessed you to start out doing YouTube videos? I mean, the first time that you did that, what made you do that?
Well, there weren't too many crafters doing YouTube, and I thought, boy, wouldn't I love to have a channel that I could watch, give like craft tutorials. And I'm really not a big fan of typing, so I had a blog, and I would put daily tutorials, and it would take me like 2 hours to like type up a tutorial. And I thought, gee, why don't I try YouTube? It's free. Oh, I wanted to do videos, but I was too cheap to pay for the video upgrade for my blog, so I thought, well, I could put them on YouTube for free, and then I could just I could share the link on my blog. And so that's where it started. And I belonged to some stamping groups. So, when I made a video, I just asked people if they would have a look. And, there wasn't a lot of competition out there, so nobody else had anything else to watch, so they checked it out. And people seemed to like them. And I had been an art teacher before I had kids. So it was just natural to just be able to reach people and share and teach.
So you were frugal from the very beginning, right?
Yep.
So
yes, I was broke. I had 3 little kids.
Yeah.
So I was broke, so I had to be frugal.
Yeah. So when you started, your children were pretty small then when you started doing videos and all that kind of stuff, huh?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. So what are you using now that you're using with the brayer?
Liquid metals. They're a new product by Ken Oliver, and I picked some up at the stamp show, and so I'm just kind of throwing them in there and then just brayering them just to kind of get a background.
And the liquid metals are those water reactive?
They are a watercolor. I believe gum arabic is the binder in these, so yeah, you could spread them around with water. I don't think they're gonna move around too much afterwards. We'll see. Yeah. I haven't really used these that much either. I just got them at the stamp show, and I just played with them for the first time the other day. And that video will pop up in a few days. I try to if I'm in a zone, I try to record a bunch at once, and then kind of use that, kind of dole those tutorials out on days where I don't have anything else going.
So did you get the his other watercolors too, the powdered watercolors?
Yes, I do have some of those.
Okay.
They're very much like Brusho. They're very pigmented, but the thing I love the most is the applicator bottles they come in, because you can poof them, just poof a little bit of air out of the bottle almost, and it carries enough of the pigment that it's easier than trying to shake out the Brushos.
Yeah.
The nuance powders.
It's so interesting to me how we all develop preferences for different things. Like I have some of the Ken Oliver watercolors. I don't have any of the Brushos yet, and but as I read and look at how different people use the various products, it's always interesting to me to see that some people have this preference and some people have that preference. Some like, the dispenser from one, some like the dispenser for the other. And the great part about art supplies, in my opinion, is that there's something out there for everybody, and for, the way that you like to create, there is something out there for you. And,
absolutely.
I love that. I just love that. So lots of people are saying that they love the portrait and they're enjoying what you're doing. So that's cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And this orange is actually the Target crayons, because I find the Target ones dissolve a little bit better than the Tim Holtz ones. And I'm going to see if I can go over that. I can go over the wet with the Tim Holtz too. So
the Target crayons are, I'm not familiar with those. Is that a watercolor? I mean, I'm assuming it's a watercolor crayon of some kind.
Yeah, it's a watercolor gel crayon.
Okay.
And they seem to be about the same as far as the size. But they do tend to like disperse in the water a little bit better. So if I use a brush, I can really easily turn that into paint.
So I would kind of this is an assumption, so you correct me if I'm wrong. I would assume that if they were in Target, that there's going to be a significant price difference between those versus the Tim Holtz Distress crayons.
Oh yeah, these are $3.49 for 8, and the Distress crayons are $12.99 for 6.
Okay.
So yeah. Quite a difference.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, the colors are different. So the ones at Target are more of a primary.
Yeah.
So if you got any of the Tim Holtz ones and you got the Target ones, you could use them together for some different effects.
Yeah. I love the going back and forth between the brush and the brayer that you're doing to create that background. That is really cool. That's great.
I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just playing. So thanks for indulging me.
Oh, we love watching somebody play. I do that. I do that every week. I play and see what happens. Ian Jackson says he's going to the Brusho factory to have a look at them in person next week. How cool is that? Nice. How cool is that?
I would not be surprised if the Color Burst are manufactured by Brusho and private labeled. They seem to be the identical product.
Well, Ian's going to have to report back to us and tell us.
Yeah.
Caged Fish wants to know if you have a video where you use just the Target crayons. Is that part of your comparison video that you have coming up?
Yeah, it'll be up tomorrow on my channel, sometime tomorrow.
Okay, so look at Lindsay's channel and the link to her channel. I mean, you can search her by The Frugal Crafter on YouTube, or you can look in the description box below the video here, and there's a link there that you should be able to click. So, yeah.
This is too loud, this dryer.
Oh, that's all right. You're fine. Yeah, and Musical Scrapper says, and we do it all day long sometimes, meaning playing and watching, and all of the above, and watching paint dry. Yes, that's true. Let's see, just checking the chat here. Okay, so here I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When the camera isn't recording, which... when I talked to you the other day when we were just checking to see, how things were going to work and if the whole situation was going to be, a go for us. And you came on and you told me that you were painting something very unusual, and I was like, and then of course later in the conversation you said, well, yeah, I had the camera recording the whole process. So I'm assuming that a whole lot of your life is now being recorded by cameras. A lot of your time is being taken up with cameras. So let's say that you turned off the camera and you took time where you just weren't even going to, think about, a class or a video or whatever. So in that moment where you're not recording, you're not even going to think about recording, what do you do? Like, what do you enjoy doing?
I'm sitting by the campfire having a beer, probably.
Okay. And, if you don't want to have too many of those and then turn on the camera, I've seen people do that.
See, I was a broadcaster, and you had to have your FCC license if you wanted to broadcast on air, and that was one of the things. You could not go on air intoxicated. That was just one of the FCC rules.
Yeah.
You don't require FCC license to broadcast anymore, but so yeah, I have that backbone of actual broadcasting experience. So, so yeah, that'd be the end of the day.
Yeah. So you just sort of kick back, put up your feet, and just kind of veg out, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So we all have to do something, It's like, I go in the afternoon, my husband and I, every afternoon, with very few exceptions, we take off and go to a certain place, and we used to drink coffee together, and then I stopped drinking coffee. We both stopped drinking coffee, and so we go to a certain place every day and drink tea, and just sit and have a cup of tea, and we will talk about the day, and then we leave the events of the day there in that place, so that when we come home, it's kind of like a clean slate when we walk through the door. We don't have to bring all the stuff from the day, and so we have like this little mini oasis every day. So that's one of the things that keeps me from going totally crazy. I think everybody has to find that.
Oh yeah.
So, and I know when you've got children at home, that has to be a challenge, that just to find that space for just Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, you do a lot of stuff with the kids too. I mean, we'll go kayaking, or we'll take the kids to a park, or do something like that too, because I do spend a lot of time working. So when I'm not working, I try not to be working. It's something I'm passionate about, so it can be hard to just not work. But I think it's important. You got to have some balance. And it can be very, very hard for YouTubers, for artists, to have that balance, because you're always thinking about this could be great video, or
Yeah, especially if you do videos on location, like a lot of people do, or they'll put the video in their car, which I have to tell you, when somebody's broadcast or recording in their car, I am just a nervous wreck personally. So I tend not to watch those a lot, because that just makes me so nervous. Although I realize it's recorded. It's like,
right.
They got where they were going, they got there safely, they got back home, and they,
uploaded it. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, in that moment, you have that feeling of it's going on live, and it's, mind games. I know. So somebody in the chat, I just gave them a small heart attack that I said I'd quit drinking coffee. So I'm really sorry that I gave you a little heart attack there, but yeah, a few years ago, I got, I don't know, my body just got, I guess it was just stress. Sometimes when you're dealing with an extended period of stress, your body hangs on for a while, and then after a while, it can just, you kind of use up its reserves, and that's pretty much what had happened to me, I think. And, I just had to make like a complete change in everything to just, get everything as cleaned out as possible, and let my body, it's like the computer, I had to reboot,
Yep.
So, pardon me, coffee was one of the things that bit the dirt during that period of time. So I have to admit that once in a while now, I will have a cup of coffee, but I enjoy it so much more now because I am not addicted to it. So now I enjoy it, so it's kind of nice, but I do drink tea. So, okay, I got another question for you. Now, wait, what are you getting ready to do? You got to tell us what you're getting ready to do.
I got some speedball ink. The person that asked me about pen and ink reminded me. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this bottle of ink right here, and I'm using a cosmetic sponge, and I am just stenciling it. This is one of the new stencils I picked up at the stamp show. It's I saw Stencil Girl using it on a free webinar that she had, and I thought, oh, I like his little swatches, so I could like stencil little bits of something on something small.
After you get finished doing that, would you move that stencil over a little bit more so we can see it a little bit better to your left? That is a great little stencil.
Let me see if I can put it against something plain. Let me see. Put it against. Open this up. I think this has got a plain. Yeah, because it's got all these little swatches in it, and I like the smaller patterns of a 6x6 stencil versus a 12x12.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much just getting small stencils now.
You know, I am too. I have quite a few of the 12x12 and the 9x12, but I'm finding that I'm gravitating more to those smaller ones too. Yeah. So I'm kind of headed that direction myself. That is a great little stencil. Very
versatile.
And
they don't mind paying the money for them if they're going to be, useful like that. If you're going to be able to use them a lot.
And so you're just using Speedball ink on that you use with the sponge on that. That's great. That's great. Okay, here I got a question for you.
Okay.
What is something that we don't know about you? That's a good question.
Boy, let's see. I'm a very anxious person. I get, well, you probably tell because I'm so like wound up all the time, but I'm a very anxious person.
So what do you do to like chill yourself back out? Is it the campfire and the beer?
Yeah, no, that helps. Yeah. I try to just take some time to chill out. Kayak, do something physical. I tend to be lazy. That's another thing that people often are surprised when I say that I tend to be very lazy. So like getting on a bike or putting on some skates or something like that.
So physical movement seems to help with that too, right?
Yeah.
That's great. You got to do I know I'm considerably older than you are, so I should so here's Mama Barb talking. You got to do whatever it takes to deal with whatever issues you have going on. If it's being anxious, if it's being, some of us tend to spiral downward easily, or some of us get too wound up, or whatever it is. You got to find that thing. And just because something works for somebody else, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And I don't know about you, but I can become this champion for, well, you got to do this, and I finally got myself over that because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. And the older I get, the more I am really aware of that fact, So, I mean, one of the things that's really good for me is to put on my walking shoes and grab my dog and go for a walk, And sometimes a few months ago, I was having such tremendous internet problems, and it was driving me crazy. And I thought, I have got to find some way to deal with this because I had no control. And I think for me, that's one of the toughest things, when I have no control over a situation, and I had no control over that. And so I'm telling you, I must have walked 50 miles that week. I mean, over the course of those few weeks in there, and my dog got a lot of work out, let me tell you.
Especially if you're a live channel, then you're really dependent on that internet.
Yes.
And that's can be stressful.
It really can. Yeah. Okay, so somebody said, Pat says she loves the wind in her hair. And let's see, what else? Oh, how do you get over artist block? Sometimes I sit down and have no idea what to do. I know you've got a good answer for that.
Yeah, I'll usually do something different. Like I'll clean my studio, or I'll reorganize something. Usually just the act of getting all that stuff out rekindles some spark.
Yeah.
Because I'll remember why I bought that, or I'm like, oh yeah, I remember a project to do with that. That was fun. I'll try that again. Or sometimes I'll just kind of go and see if my girlfriends want to go crafty shopping, and getting out and looking at new product. can be very inspiring, just to see, even if you don't buy anything, just to see what's out there.
Yeah, just wandering. I think wandering in the craft or art stores can just be, or hardware stores, just sometimes just wandering down the aisles and looking, sometimes that can do it, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things that works for me too is I love magazines and I love books, and sometimes I'll just get a big stack of magazines that I haven't looked at in a long time, and I'll just sit down and I'll just be leafing through them, and the next thing you know, I'm thinking, oh, that's a great spark for an idea. Rarely do I do what's in the magazine. It's just that trigger, something will trigger me to think about, oh, what about this? What about that? And don't you think that's one of the best questions, is to think, well, what if, or what about, and just play. Just play.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like got a mime conversation going with my 10-year-old about where her softball jersey is.
That's okay. Go for it.
That's like an interpretive dance out the door. I'm like, what is...
Yeah.
He's 11, not 10. Whoops.
Oh, well, you gotta... You
and they're twins to be...
You need to get it right. There's two times in your life that you have to get the numbers right. One is up until you're about 20, and the other one is when you're past 80. When my mom lived with me, she liked to tell people that she was 89 and a half. We got back to the counting in half years again. Or she loved to say to people, well, can you guess how old I am? I mean, talk about a loaded question.
Yeah, seriously.
It's like... And nobody dared to answer the question, nobody did. You could always tell the people that were used to dealing with elderly people, because they would have good answers. Mm-hmm. So my fairy treasures, that's Angie Bell says Zumba really helps her with stressful situations and nervous energy. So that's
good.
Cool. Yeah, so Zumba. I've never tried Zumba.
No, me neither.
Yeah, I used to do step aerobics years ago. And my son used to make fun of me. He had just graduated from high school, and he used to make fun of me doing step aerobics because he thought that was pretty frou-frou. So I got him to go to a class with me one time. And I will tell you what, he didn't do it very well, let's just say that. And I laughed till I was just about rolling on the floor. It's like it was one of the only things I've ever seen him do that he didn't pick up like very quickly.
It's a lot of coordination, step aerobics. I remember that.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Let's see. Okay, here's another. Ian says that sometimes he uses a dictionary and picks out a word, and that's his catalyst for working, creating a picture or whatever it is that he's working. I don't know what he specializes in or what's his primary art focus, so... but I think that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And Sandy Jones says live streams and live YouTubes help her. She really likes that. That gets her going.
Oh yeah, the live interaction I think is pretty cool that, it's so accessible to everybody now.
Yeah, it is. Okay, here's a question. What are you using, Lindsay, on that stencil? Are you using the Tim crayons or the Target crayons, or both?
I've used both.
Both, okay. So that's what she's using, the Target gel crayons. Is that what they're called, Target gel crayons?
Yeah.
And then the distress crayons, so that's what she's using. I'm not familiar with that stencil that you have there. That's a really cool stencil. What is that from?
These are fantastic. They're new. I just got them at the stamp show because I got the other version of this last year. Faber-Castell is these sets of 10 6x6 stencils for $6.99 or $5.99.
Okay.
But they're paper. But I use them on the jelly plate, and I find that as they build up the coats of acrylic paint, they become very stable and versatile and almost waterproof. So I was really happy with the ones I got last year, and they're all still hanging in there. So I got this other pack because it was new designs, and
that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little sampler, and then if something did happen to it, like, I'm a big fan. In the summer we go on vacation, we rent a camp, and I take my supplies out in a canoe, and I'll just paddle around and stop and paint, and sometimes all my stencils.
Now that's brave.
I wouldn't worry about it. So
now that is brave, taking your art supplies in a canoe. Oh my goodness!
I have the canoe or the art supplies. They're the ones I'm not going to worry too much about if they don't, if they go overboard.
That is brave, I'll tell you. Well, those are pretty cool. I have looked at those stencils, and you know what? I turned my nose up at them because they were paper.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're
okay, so now you have just enabled a whole lot of us to go and investigate the paper stencils.
Thanks. For the price of one stencil, you're getting 10 stencils for the price of one. So
the patterns are nice and small too. I mean, they're a nice size. That looks like a knit stitch.
Oh, it does kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's because I used to knit a lot. I used to have a store where I sold European knitting machines. So yeah, knitting was my thing for a long time.
Oh wow.
Okay, what's the best tool for making a complex stencil? I've not made a lot of stencils personally, so do you have experience with making stencils?
Yeah, I would use and everyone likes to use their die cutters, but I'll save like waste pieces, like paper pieces or cardstock from my die cutter and use those as stencils, but I don't like to cut stencil film with my die cutters just because or my electronic cutter because it dulls the blade. But you could use transparencies or acetate. But what I recommend is actually, if you have like a pattern that you want to do, print it off on the computer and then get some stencil film and a wood burning tool because you can get a stencil cutter tip.
Yeah.
And I would put the paper under a piece of glass, and then I would put the stencil film on top of the glass, and then I would just use a wood burner to cut around it and just go slow. It's so easy. You don't have the fatigue of trying to cut it with an X-Acto knife, and you don't have to dull your expensive die cutting blade, because I just got a scan and cut, and those blades per blade is like $12, so I'm really cheap, and I will use my old Cricut that I have software for, so I can use it with whatever files, and I just save the scan and cut for when I'm actually just scanning and cutting, because I don't want to waste the blades.
Yeah, sure.
And there's been a shortage; you've been hard to find too. So,
one of the things as I'm watching you work that I love is how you're working back and forth in the background, and then you'll work on the girl, and then you'll go back and work in the background, and then back on the girl. Is that just something is that the typical way that you work in an art journal, or is that are you doing that because of the mediums that you're working with?
I tend to jump around a lot. This is probably more typical because I'm not worried about it, so I'm not I don't have any expectation for how this is going to turn out. I had no idea when I turned on the camera today what I was going to do, except just play. So I guess it's kind of typical for this type of experimentation.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, but I think I just love the way you're going back and forth. I mean, I tend to do, when I work in an art journal page, I tend to focus on the background and then building up until I do some sort of focal something. Well, sometimes when you get to that point, when I get to that point, it's like, well, I either fall in love with the background, and then I have to just say, well, I really like the background, so I'm going to call that done. Or then I have to figure out how I'm going to get the central figure to show up, and so it's, but I love this, where you started with the girl, and it could be anything, a larger focal image of some kind, and then just work back and forth. I think that's great. You've taught me something today, which I really appreciate. We love that.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Let's see. Vicki wanted to know if you ever shop on Amazon. She said she's 100 miles from a craft store, so online is all she has. So she wants to know about ordering from Amazon. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, I've ordered some stuff on Amazon. I find they usually don't have the best prices. So if I'm just getting one thing, then that's fine. But if I know I need a bunch, because I teach classes, so I tend to go through and go through quite a bit of supplies. So if I know I'm doing a big order, I'm not going to look at Amazon. I'm going to go between usually Jerry's. If I need framing stuff, I usually get it at Blick. but I'll go around to the different, like a few different shops, like Jerry's, Cheap Joe's, Blick, and then I'll kind of see who has what I need, and then I'll see who has the best prices, and I'll see if there's any coupons, and then I usually shop at the one I can get everything and, you know, get the best price. So that's kind of how I approach that. If I just need, like, I don't know, like a box of envelopes or, you know, something small like that, I'll get it on Amazon. But
so Cheap Joe's, Jerry's Artorama, and what was the other one that you said? Was there another one? Cheap Joe's
Blick.
And Blick's. Those all have great online stores that you can order, and they carry a wide variety of products. So yeah, that's good information there. Lady True North wants to know if you've ever used an empty hot glue gun as a fuse tool.
No, but I've used a wood burner as it, and it works great.
Okay, so
my hot glue guns are I use them until they are toast. I usually burn through a glue gun every 2 years. And so mine, and they're not like the fine tip ones. They're like the heavy duty industrial ones. So I go through them. They wouldn't be very good for that for me because mine are pretty bulky. But the wood burners, Creative Hot Marks and wood burners work really great for in place of a fuse.
Okay, so what is that little tool you're using there?
This is actually a product I'm not that crazy about, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to revisit and play with. So I got them a couple of years ago. They're called blends, and I think they were kind of like, I think I might have got like a prototype of them, and I love the idea of them, but actually getting ink out of this thing can be a little challenging. But they're like a sponge with an ink vessel, ink reservoir, and then you can use it to like, you can use it with stencils, or you can just blend over backgrounds, and so yeah, I was just kind of playing with that because I haven't used that very much. I thought it would be fun to kind of frame or add some texture. And
so because I know that you streamed before this, so Lindsay has a show that is right before what I do here, and so I know that she was slammed up against stopping, getting done with what she was doing, and then getting over here. So in between those things, did you just like get a basket or a box and run down to your space and grab up stuff, or
pretty much?
That is great. Oh, you guys, we need to really tell her how grateful we are that she was able to join us today, because this is really, I mean, I was surprised she said yes. I thought we would have to schedule a different time because of her doing her show before this. So we need to tell her, give her some love, people. So I really appreciate you doing this today. I really do. It's been so much fun to just watch, and I didn't have to do anything. I just sat here and just yacked and thought of stuff, you know. So, and just being able to watch and observe is so much fun. So,
thank you very much. It's been fun to be here and to create along with everybody. And I haven't looked up at the chat too much because I've been looking at my canvas here.
That's great. No, I'm pretty much getting, I think I've covered most. I think there was one question that scrolled off, and that was about, you were talking about taking some art supplies in the canoe, and somebody asked about what kinds of things you choose to take with you when you're going to go away. You know, do you always take art supplies with you when you go for a vacation or something?
Yes.
Yes.
I always do. I have to have something. I usually bring, I'll bring a book, I usually bring about, I usually get through 5 books on vacation. And I bring art supplies. I will grab things that I haven't been using a lot. Are not going to break my heart if I lose. I have like just a travel watercolor palette and some duplicate supplies, and I bring extras because my kids will create. My kids will be out my girls especially will be out in the canoe with me. They're very creative. And you know, sometimes I brought my first set of these paper stencils last year, and my girls had I had some watercolor paper, some extra watercolor paper, and they just did a lot of stuff with stencils. Even though they can draw, they had a lot of fun with those. So it kind of gave me some new ideas to use them more as like a focal point of an art page instead of just a background. And And yeah, I usually we'll bring like, toys like a badminton and, basketballs and things like that. And, yeah, we find we do a lot of stuff together, but we all like to have our own space and our own time too. So we all bring things that we could do independently, our own books and our own supplies and stuff.
So do you tend to, when you're going out for a vacation or whatever, do you still tend to do more watercolor as opposed to other kinds of supplies?
Just because it's easier, I'll tend to use watercolor more.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to transport. And I don't have to worry about it falling into the pond on the canoe and have it like poison something, It's
yeah, right. We don't want to do that.
Fairly benign, benign media.
What about the coloring book craze? What do you think about that?
I think it's great, honestly. I was actually just in the Dollar Tree yesterday, and they had some decent coloring books that were printed on one side and had decent paper. So, I mean, I think it's great. I think that it's a lot of people have anxiety and a lot of people are stressed out, and I think it helps them just find that peace and maybe feel a little more productive if they're sitting at home watching TV at night, just to have something else to do instead of reaching into a bag of chips to color. And it's also a great thing as a designer to be able to work out ideas and work out color schemes. So if you're like, because I mean, I don't want to say crank out work because that sounds more like less artistic and more like being a machine. But I do, have deadlines, a lot of deadlines. And I find that if I'm just sitting back, just playing with like a huge box of crayons or colored pencils, and I'm actually going to turn up because I think I'm done. I think I'm done that piece. I'll just hold it up there. I'll turn that up so I can talk to you in the face. Hello.
Hello.
I think that that it's great because I can work out color patterns. Like maybe I want to use teal and peach and rose or something like that, or lilac and periwinkle and yellow, and I can work that stuff out in a coloring book and not worry how it's going to turn out. And if it turns out great, then I can just like tear it out and stick it to my pinboard. And when I'm making a card or I'm making a painting, I can use that color scheme and kind of come up with some new ideas because it's a total free zone where you don't have to. There's no final piece of artwork that you're going to be judged on. It's complete play. Kind of like working in an art journal. Nobody's going to judge you. It's your journal. Nobody has to see it.
And you didn't have to draw it to start with. You can just start right into the color. So, one of the fun things that somebody said a minute ago, and I forgot, I think it was Janice, said, when you're out in the canoe, she said, and you have plenty of water too.
Yes.
So, can you hold your page up just one quick second before we let you go?
Yep. Let's see. Is it in frame? There we go.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. Isn't that great, you guys?
Fun.
Yeah, it was great. Well, I promised you that we would only keep you for an hour. I know you got stuff to do with your kids, so thank you so much for doing this with us, and we will see you, everywhere. 'Cause she's everywhere, folks. She's everywhere. So thank you so much, Lindsay. I hope you have a great weekend. And,
thank you. You too.
See you next time. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.